Well, welcome to Soul Bites, our podcast. This is our snackable trends, tips, and thought leadership for those in the business of talent. Today's guest, very exciting, Lucy Adey, co-founder, chief executive soul for Good Soul Hunting. And this is our boutique search brand that handpicks executive go-getters for purpose-driven health and wellness businesses. So happy Women's Day, Lucy. You're an anomaly as a female founder of a recruitment search agency. And when I look through, all the people out there, there's a lot of male leadership out there. So it's great to have you on. We've got a few things happening in the industry right now. The great quit, the great resignation. We've got a lot of people leaving jobs and choosing something else. We've got purpose over paycheck, where we keep hearing people want to be on a values-aligned career where they really believe in the company. And then we're seeing shifts in the job market due to new and emerging skills and businesses and subsectors as we take on digitization, personalization, and hyper growth. In what you're seeing, and you are recruiting 24/7 right now, what is the number one thing that strikes you that's happening in the job market right now?
Thanks, Em. Yeah, I think that it's probably not rocket science. I think people have seen this in the news, but we're definitely seeing the competitiveness in the industry. So we're obviously focused on health and wellness, particularly in the US right now. So competitive. So candidates are receiving multiple offers. They are getting counter-offered all the time from their current employer. I think McKinsey has shared that salaries are going up by 10%. We've definitely seen that as well. And I think that's reflected across wider markets than just ours. I've certainly seen that in the news, but that's something we are seeing every single day. And then I guess the other thing that we're seeing on a different topic is definitely from the candidate side. They are really looking for businesses that are have got their DE&I sorted, are very inclusive workplaces. That is coming up very regularly now when we're diving into sort of motivations and values. That's a really important piece.
That's great. And I'd have to agree with that. We're certainly seeing a lot more positions being placed where you're actually looking after the DEI, for the company. And we will be interviewing some of those folks in due course as well. Look, as a good soul hunter, a headhunter, if you like, you're scanning the world of work, people, who are actively looking for roles, but also people who are perhaps in a role, not looking for a role, but could be ideal for a new opportunity. You're famous for your spidey sense, for getting a really good feel early on if something's going to work out, either on the candidate and the client side, because you are matchmakers. Could you perhaps unpack for us, what is the secret sauce? How do you facilitate finding this happy connection?
Yeah, the spidey sense. So, I think a big part of the spidey sense is experience. So I've now been in the people business, whether it's recruitment or HR or employment law. I've been in the space now for over 15 years. And so there is an element that it becomes, I don't know if you should say this, innate. I think innate is something different, but, it becomes intuitive. It's based on experience. So that's definitely a part of it. But we have really wanted to try and codify that as much as we can within our process, because we obviously want to be able to apply that to all of our clients that we work with and candidates that we work with. And so it's really digging into values and motivations. That's really what it comes down to, I think. And what's really important is going beyond the surface level. So, you may ask, why are you motivated to move on, or what are your values, and often, or what are you looking for? And the answers that you get will tend to be relatively surface level. So, for example, I don't want to work for a startup. I want to work for a larger company. So when we hear that, it's about digging in underneath that answer. So is that about somebody is really wanting security? And so they don't want to go to a startup because it feels like a startup is a riskier option, although I think we've seen some of the bigger companies over the last 2 years, it's not necessarily actually a riskier option, but I understand that. So it could be about security. It could be about somebody doesn't like to work within boundaries or does like to work within boundaries. So it could be about bureaucracy and their working style. It could be about they really love to work in a larger environment that has lots of people around, where there's a big office, because some people people do still like to go to the office. Or it could be about like resources and perks, and they really love having, the coffee machine and the beer tap and all the cool stuff, and I love that stuff. So yeah, really just digging in underneath. So it's probably not about those things, it'll be about something underneath. Is it about connection? Is it about the safety security side? So that's something we spend a lot of time on. Really digging in and really understanding that. So that's on the candidate side. On the client side, it's about spending a lot of time upfront digging in on, again, what are they looking for and what's behind what they're looking for, because it's exactly the same. We'll get asked for specific requirements, and it's really about understanding, why is that requirement being requested? Is it the surface level answer, or is it something more? And is it about the person that was in the role before didn't have that particular requirement, and that was the reason they thought that person didn't work out, when actually, if we dig in a lot closer, we might find that it was actually something else. So really helping to unpick, whether it is a client we're talking to or a candidate, but really trying to unpick and dig deeper. That's really then what sets us up to have what we then call the spidey sense.
And this must stop the pain later on, right? Either candidates dropping out last minute because you didn't actually know their real motivator, or clients getting to interview stage and perhaps not liking what you put before them because they're actually thinking differently, right?
Yeah, exactly. Really, really digging in upfront definitely helps the process as we move through.
Great. And then I think McKinsey had they had a few things here in a related conversation, didn't they? Do you perhaps want to take us through those?
Yeah, so McKinsey had talked about 3 things that people are considering when they're leaving a job, and we can definitely see these three things surfacing as we're speaking to people. So the first one was fit. So what is the culture? And I guess this is for people thinking both about their current environment, but also if they're being made an offer, perhaps what that new environment looks like. So either way, what is the culture? Do I fit? Do I feel like it's an inclusive environment for me, whoever I am? The second are links. So this is more like, who are my connections? And I've definitely seen this, particularly when you're getting into maybe counteroffer territory and things where, oh, but all my friends are here, or this particular boss has worked with me for so long, I feel very loyal to them, versus going to a new environment. And which is why something we would recommend with clients that are recruiting is really trying to create those connections through the process. So have them go and meet as many people as you can to create that sense. And then the third element is sacrifice. So, and again, that could be leaving something, going towards something great, or moving away from pain. But, is that benefits? Is it salary? Is it equity? Is it a cool brand? Like, what are those elements, and how are you picking and choosing what is a sacrifice for you, how important that sacrifice is, and whether that will be alleviated, perhaps, if you're going somewhere else. So we're definitely seeing those 3 things at play on every single conversation.
That's great. So you hire predominantly in senior sales, marketing, operations roles. What are the common skills, knowledge, experience that brands are looking for in health and wellness today? What's the terrain today?
I mean, obviously there's a lot of different things going on across those areas, but I think some of the common elements, number 1 would be, there's obviously a lot of digital. Everyone's seen that, the whole world pretty much had to move to digital. So if you're not in that space, you need to get there, really. And I posted a video on LinkedIn the other day helping a lot of our fitness salespeople trying to move to that space, because it's something that's really hard, trying to go from brick and mortar fitness sales and things, moving yourself into the technology world is quite hard. So there are a few tips there, but that's definitely something we're seeing. And I guess aligned with that is the D2C experience. So direct to consumer brands, there are obviously loads in fitness and in wellness. So experience in that space is highly valuable at the moment. The second thing is having a great network and having really strong industry knowledge. So this applies whether it's fitness, whether it's health. So we're working on a lot of opportunities at the moment in sales and partnerships particularly. So this becomes really important there. So if you're in the health space, you need to have the Rolodex of, whether payers, providers, brokers, employers. That becomes really important. Fitness side, it's having the relationships in with the clubs. So that's something we're seeing coming across pretty much all opportunities in that space. And then the third is really about being able to make an immediate impact. So particularly because there are a lot of startups at the moment, a lot of the roles that we work on are in the startup and scale up space. So that just becomes really important. So being able to execute, being happy to jump on the phone, be able to, I guess, get started without having to have done 3 months of onboarding, and I'll talk about onboarding later. Onboarding is super important, but you've got to be able to get out there. If it's sales, get on the phone. If it's partnerships, do that networking and things, and really make it happen from day one is something we're really hearing a lot about as well.
Great. We're seeing a lot of fat go from the industry, aren't we? All those roles that were perhaps just direction, pointing people to go in certain directions are gone, and everyone actually has to do real work today, don't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Look, what would your 2 top pieces of advice be for clients hiring top talent now, and your top 2 pieces of advice for candidates looking for game-changing roles now?
I've probably got way more than 2 for each, but I'll attempt to narrow it down. So on the client side, my first piece of advice is move fast, stay engaged. So as we chatted about earlier, the market is super competitive. People are receiving multiple offers. Other brands are moving really quickly. So things are happening in between interviews. So you really need to move candidates through each stage as quickly as possible, while still obviously maintaining a great process and being really mindful and thoughtful through that process, but moving people through quickly. And if you can't necessarily move them through quickly, at the very least be engaged through that entire period. So if you've got someone interviewing today, and then you've got another 3 or 4 interviews over the next week before you make a decision, no problem, that's the process, but make sure you stay really engaged with that person, because in the meantime, they're interviewing elsewhere. So I think that's really important. And then the same thing applies once actually the offer is made. So once you've made an offer, that is not the end of the recruitment process. It continues from there, particularly in this market, because we are seeing some candidates are continuing to interview, even though they've got an offer. And it may be that they feel bad about pulling out of the process, or they just keeping options on the table, but that is happening. So recommend, getting them immediately onto email if you can, WhatsApp groups or Slack channels or whatever your business uses to get them engaged. I would be setting up maybe a weekly check-in with them, maybe introducing them to other members of the team through that period. If you can and you have access to them physically, do a lunch, do a dinner. Like, the more you can do between offer being accepted and start date, the less likely it is that they're going to be counter-offered or accept something else. So I think that's probably the most important thing right now. And then that sort of leads then into onboarding as well. So, onboarding is going even further, but the recruitment process does not, again, end on the new hire's first day. So we're seeing a lot of issues at the onboarding side, especially, again, within the startup space. And I get it, like, it's so hard to get a really slick onboarding process in place, but it doesn't need to be fancy. Again, it just needs to be really engaged, really clear, lots of check-ins, and really build on it from there. But there's multiple statistics about the onboarding process. So Glassdoor has got a stat, onboarding improves new hire retention by 82%, which I would definitely see that. Gallup says that 1 in 10 employees strongly agree that their employer does an excellent job of onboarding new employees. So that's only 1 in 10 think that it's being done well. And then Digitate shares that new hires who have a poor onboarding experience are twice as likely to be looking for another role. And that's definitely something we can see. So yeah, move fast and stay engaged would be my first piece of advice. My second sort of is a little bit aligned with that. It's like, know when you've found the one. I think it's easy to keep going, but you need to trust the process. And once you've found the match, and it's never going to be perfect, that's people, but when you really, if you found that connection and they've got the basics of what you need, and you can, getting a sense that they're going to make an impact, then make the offer, because that's really, again, I don't think that's been the case over the last 10 years necessarily, but right now it's really important, because while you make them wait and interview a bunch of other people that are not then stacking up to how you see them, they're also interviewing elsewhere, and that's where things go wrong. So, and if your process isn't sort of strong enough to be able to make you feel confident in making a match, then it's probably time to have a look at the process as well.
Right.
That's clients, candidates. So I think the first thing for candidates is, and this is something we can definitely help with, is just spend time understanding what you want, because you are potentially going to end up in a situation with either multiple offers, a counter offer, or potentially an offer for a brand that you love, but maybe the offer comes in slightly under what you were hoping for. You really need to understand your own values and motivations to help you then make that decision. So if you don't really understand why you're looking or what you're looking for, then once you're, given that decision point, it makes it really tough. So like we were saying earlier, that earlier you can think about these things and start having that conversation, the easier those decisions will become. And then the second thing for candidates would be just remembering that the world is small. So when you are interviewing, particularly if you're someone that's passionate about the health and wellness space and want to stay within it, realizing that the interview process is actually building your network. So I think, this is an opportunity, a great opportunity to be meeting leaders within this industry and creating awesome connections. And it may be that you're not offered the role, or they offer you the role and it's not the right one for you. But regardless, you're making amazing connections here that you'll be able to utilize in the future. So I think that's really important, and maybe balances out a little bit, because everyone, including me, is telling the candidate that you're in charge right now. So just remembering that may be the case, but it's still like great opportunity to be building really, really positive and meaningful connections as you are going through these processes.
Well, that's great. Look, thank you for those actionable things that I think both candidates and clients can put into action immediately. And I think that's the most important thing. And that is the purpose of this podcast, is to try and be really helpful for people out there. Our final question, and of course, as you know, we always ask all our guests, Lucy, what sets your soul on fire?
Well, traveling is definitely something I love. And
so it's been a great couple of years then.
Well, we've actually been pretty lucky. I think we've been in the right place, because we have still been able to do a bit of travel, but certainly missed our trips to America and things. But we did get to go, as people will have seen on LinkedIn. We got to go to Miami and meet as a team, which was amazing. But yeah, beyond that, and when I think about more traveling for the soul, my absolute favorite place and trip is to go to Nepal. So we worked together when I very first went, and it was a life-changing experience for me, even though I went with my parents and a bunch of their friends, but it was still unbelievable. And then I went on and on about it so much that I then took all of my friends 4 years later, and it's now been 8 years since we've been able to go, with everything going on. And we did actually have another trip planned for November, but COVID is not quite there yet, but we hopefully will go back. But what I love about it are the people in Nepal are just amazing, and it's just an opportunity. So when we go, we do a trek up to Gokyo-ri, which is a peak that is the same height as Everest Base Camp, but overlooks Everest. And so it's like usually between 2 and 3 weeks of hiking. And it's just so amazing, because you get to spend all this time with the Sherpas and the Nepalese people, and they really look after you. And it's just such a different experience from what we are living in these days, with social media and all the pressures of the life that we lead, and just spending that time in the mountains and with these amazing people is just, that's absolutely the best thing I've ever done. So I feel very overdue to get there. So, and my favorite guide, we're like trying to book a trip soon. So if anyone wants to join a trip to Nepal in the next year or so, then let me know, because we'll be getting that sorted soon.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you for that generous share. And, you're living the dream. You're living your purpose. You've started this great company to help a whole lot of other people, create impact in our wonderful industry. So thank you. Thank you. What a great podcast. Make sure you follow along for more in the future. Happy International Women's Day. Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, Em.